You're listening to episode 932 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is being offered by our permanent deacon, Deacon Brett Edmondson, and the homily title is The Way You Train is the Way You Fight, given on the 12th Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2024.
Good morning, everybody. I see lots of empty seats out there. Where is everybody this morning? I think we're going to have a blowout crowd for Father James' first Mass at the 11:15. So the good news for you guys is you can sell your parking spaces and pay for dinner. It should be really easy today, right? So guys, I'm going to be a little bit morbid this morning, and I'm going to actually start with two stories about death, right? Boy, that's a great way to start, Brett. Okay, well, anyway, that's what we're going to do. One happy and maybe one not so happy. So here we go. So the first one, when I was a seminarian, there was a priest in our community, a mentor and a friend to all of us. John was his name. John was one of the kindest and the most humble people I think I've ever met. And when I knew him, he was in his prime, so he was energetic and he was vigorous and he was full of life. So maybe you can imagine our shock when we learned that he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. I think he was probably shocked by that as well. He only lived for a few months after the diagnosis, and what I remember most about that time was a letter that he wrote while he was on his deathbed. He wrote to all of us, and he said these words. He said, "Brothers, these past few months have been difficult, and as you know, sometimes very difficult. So I want to thank you for your love and for your prayers. And as it comes time to say goodbye, I want you to know this. I die full of hope. I die full of hope," he said, "because despite the difficulties, all is grace. All is grace." So John died on an Easter Sunday, which I'm sure was not by chance. Second story. The second story is a little bit more unsettling. This also happened years ago. A doctor friend of mine was treating a young man who he said was probably the most difficult patient he had ever worked with, demanding and uncooperative and verbally abusive towards the people who were trying to help him. And I don't know what this man's diagnosis was, but despite the best efforts of his medical team, his condition kept deteriorating, and eventually death became a certainty. Well, guys, when it came, it was awful. It was awful. My friend was in the room, Jim was in the room, and he said as the blood pressure began to drop, this young man began to scream, "No, no, no," over and over again. "No, no, no." And he said he kept screaming, "No," all the way out. His screams becoming weaker and weaker until finally he slipped into unconsciousness, and then he was gone. Well, I don't have to tell you, everybody who was in that room walked out shaken. And while I don't know what that young man's story was, it was a hard, hard way to end. So 2 different deaths and 2 very different experiences of death. You know, in the scriptures, the sea is often used as a symbol for the forces of death and destruction and chaos in our lives, those forces that are always waiting to drown and destroy us. So think about the primal chaos, the watery abyss in Genesis 1, right, around which God has to place boundaries so that he can create a space for life. Or in the Exodus story, the destructive power of the Red Sea, through which God has to open a way for his people to pass before that same sea crashes back down on the Egyptian army and crushes them. Or even the power of the Sea of Galilee, the stormy Sea of Galilee in our gospel today, which threatens the boat in which Jesus and his disciples are traveling. Chaos and death and destruction, those are an inescapable part of our journey through this life, aren't they? An inescapable part of our broken world, at least until the Lord returns and makes all things new. So we see things like young people who die, or earthquakes or hurricanes that happen, or life turns against us, or things that we once thought were stable and secure start to crumble beneath us. And that's not even to talk about all the things we do to ourselves, right? The malice and the cruelty and the weakness we can wreak on one another. Friends, God's not indifferent to all of this. He's not asleep to it. He doesn't will death and destruction on us for our own good, right? He doesn't minimize how harmful and overwhelming these forces can be. That's why he sent Jesus. That's why he sent Jesus, because God knew that given what we faced, we couldn't just be saved from on high. No, instead, God had to come down and get into the boat with us. We couldn't be saved from on high. God had to come down and get into the boat with us. And indeed, he still comes. He still wants to come down and get into the boat with us if we'll let him. Now, I don't know about you, but as for me, most of the time, I'd be okay if God just saved me from on high, right? If he would just say the word, right, and take away the storm, or even better, prevent it in the first place. That would certainly be more comfortable. And I tell him that frequently, but he never seems to listen, right? But here's the thing. We're not made for comfort. Pope Benedict once said, we are made for greatness, not comfort. We're made for greatness. And greatness comes from persevering in the face of chaos and difficulty, turning to the Lord and letting him become our strength and our still point, even as the winds and the waters rage around us. That doesn't happen automatically, as you know. Soldiers will say that the way you train is the way you'll fight. The way you train is the way you'll fight. So if 99% of our time is spent living for ourselves, focused on our own agenda, lost in our distractions, relying on our own powers, it's going to be really hard to turn to the Lord or sense his presence when we need him. Chaos, real chaos, is unpredictable, right? It shows up when it wants to. It's unexpected, it's overwhelming, and it's disorienting. And that makes it hard to focus on the Lord because all we can see is the sea raging around us, or our world falling apart, or death staring us in the face. So friends, my encouragement to you today is this. Start training now. Start training now so that you'll be ready. If you've gotten lazy, recommit to daily prayer. If it's been a while, go to confession. Let the Lord come into those broken, hurting places in your heart and in your life. When you get out of bed in the morning, as your feet hit the floor, offer your day to God before you do anything else. There's an interesting thing that happens when we open the door and start letting the Lord have access to our life. That inner monologue that we all have going on in our heads all the time, that starts to turn into a dialogue. God starts to speak to us through the scriptures, through the people in our life, through the events of our life. And as we learn to trust his voice and sense his presence, our own need to control dies. And in its place, a kind of freedom and courage and vitality arise. Friends, when that happens, life's storms can still knock us down, but they can never knock us out.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast, and a big thank you to Deacon Brett Edmondson for offering the homily. It was inspiring and challenging at the same time, so thank you so much, Deacon Brett, for that. Also, he mentioned that there was a seminarian or a person that was going to be offering his first Mass, and that was going to be Father James Ladd. And Father James Ladd was just ordained the day before, so this was his first Mass, and he graced us with coming on one of our last Masses on this Sunday, so that was wonderful. He was with us at Holy Trinity a couple years back for a summer assignment, and I had him as well when I was down in Grants Pass for a summer assignment. So he has connections with me in kind of a double way, once with the parish here, and then once with me when I was down south. So it was great to have him and to have him ordained and be with him on his first go-around for a Mass. Also what was mentioned was another person, Father Justin Echevarria. He was a student of ours at our grade school, and of course went all the way through to 8th grade and then into high school elsewhere, and he was ordained with Father James, as well as two other people, and that was a wonderful thing for him, that he was able to do that and be part of that ceremony. He will be with us this coming Thursday at our 8:15 a.m. Mass. So if you hear this now, and I'm recording this or producing this on a Monday, June 24, you will know that in a couple days, you can come to Holy Trinity, and be part of that Mass. It'll be great. We'll have also a reception that will follow. So keep those gentlemen in your prayers, Father Justin Echeverria and Father James Ladd. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can check out my websites for my podcasts or Facebook or other social media. You can even email me right from the front page there, and I will certainly get back to you as fast as I can. In the meantime, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.